GM, everyone.
Yes, no problem.
Hopefully you're not too tired. We're good to start, right? Okay. So today I'm going to tell you about using transaction simulations to achieve Web2 UX in Web3, which is pretty much what we talked on the previous panels and on all the previous talks. That's like kind of the holy grail, right? Web2 UX. I'm just gonna give everyone a couple of minutes to settle down. Yeah.
Come here. Do I have to
Okay, good to go now. So, using transaction simulations to achieve Web2 UX in Web3. First of all, a bit about me. I'm Ivo. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Ambire. So, what is Ambire? Ambire is the first hybrid account abstraction extension wallet. And when I say hybrid, what I really mean is it combines the best from EOAs and smart accounts. And our mission is to make self-custody easy and secure for everyone. And also our team is one of the pioneers in the account abstraction space. I co-authored an EAP, another one, for verifying signatures from smart contract accounts that aren't deployed yet. And we won a grant from the Ethereum Foundation for email-based recovery through decaying signatures. So, what's the problem? The problem is that self-custody is extremely hard to use, as we already covered. And what's the reason for this? Well, there are many reasons, but let's cover some of the ones that are related to this talk in particular. So we all know about phishing and drainers, and it's not only the new people who can get scammed in this space. It's also very experienced people, and basically phishing can go after phishing attacks can go after everyone. So we all know the stats, I guess. Over 300 million lost last year. And then another issue is that we have been conditioned to sign checks, right? So this is something that began a long time ago with the popular wallets, but even to this day, it's kind of considered a norm to see something you don't fully understand and then go ahead and click sign. So that's not great. And then the other thing is that state changes are not reflected immediately, which is also something I mentioned on the panel. Like, if you do a transaction, it doesn't get immediately reflected on your dashboard in your wallet until it gets confirmed by the network. And then finally, this is a really interesting one, is that in account abstraction you have transaction batching, which is really cool. But transaction batching can feel like magic if it works properly, but in most wallets it doesn't. Why? Because when you put something in your queue, when you put something in your batch, the state changes, the balance changes that are a result of this are not going to get reflected immediately. I'm going to tell you more about this in a minute. So how we fix it? We fix it through simulations, but not that kind of simulations, although I wouldn't know. You haven't seen the matrix, but yeah, what I mean by simulations is reflecting the balance changes that will be caused by transactions that are not yet confirmed by the network. So what are the UX goals of our simulations? First of all, the first UX goal is immediate response when you send or receive money. Second of all, we have the security goal, which is you want to know what you're signing, you want to know how the transaction that you're about to sign will affect you. And then finally, enabling transaction batching in account abstraction. But we also have some additional constraints. What are the additional constraints? So first of all, we really avoid third-party providers, which is not fantastic for everyone in the room who's building infrastructure. Sorry guys. But the reason for this is that we're aiming for neutrality, reliability, and most importantly, keeping the decentralization. Because when you think about it, it's really controversial, but when you think about it, you take any wallet, you take Rabbit, you take, well, MetaMask not so much, but if you take any wallet and not every single third-party provider, other than the RPC, you're going to end up with a wallet that doesn't work, right? So you're not going to end up with a wallet that doesn't do simulations, cannot get the price of the coins, of the tokens you have in your portfolio, cannot even get your portfolio, because most wallets use third-party tools for your portfolio as well. So this kind of cripples each wallet, because it creates dependence on third-party infrastructure providers, and it cripples you in a way that if you were to support an additional network tomorrow, you have to get every single third-party supplier that you have to also support this third-party network. And yeah, that's an additional constraint for us, that we want to support, first of all the popular networks, and second of all, custom networks as well. So we want to, like, if you only have an RPC for a custom network, that should be enough. And that should be enough to support simulations. So the first goal is immediate response when I do something, right? So if I send someone 100 USDC, I should immediately see my balance going down by 100 USDC. That's a total no-brainer. But the bonus here of this UX goal would be to also see when you're about to receive money. So like for example, let's say that Ethereum wasn't so cheap and fast at the moment. Let's say that confirming an Ethereum transaction took like 1 minute or even more. Or you're using some made-up chain which takes like, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes. At this point, when someone sends me funds, I ought to be able to see in my dashboard that I'm about to receive those funds, because that's technically possible, and I'm gonna cover that again in a minute. Then the second UX goal we have is security, right? Understanding what you're signing exactly. You're doing a swap here, and the simulation shows you that you're going to be spending 0.2 ETH and getting some USDT. And then finally, this is the most mind-boggling one, please bear with me on this one. When you are batching transactions, so let's say batching actions into one transaction, let's say that I want to do a swap, and then using the output of that swap, send someone funds. So let's say I don't have USDT at the moment, but I want to swap my ETH for USDT and then send you some USDT in one transaction. There is no way of doing this in a normal wallet, because when I queue the swap, first of all, not many wallets support transaction batching to begin with, but let's say we get a wallet that does, and I put the swap in the batch queue, but I don't see my USDT because the wallet doesn't know that I'm about to receive USDT. And in Ambire, we know, and we show you that after the transaction gets signed, you are about to get a certain amount of USDT, and now you are allowed to use that USDT in the transfer screen. So you are now allowed to spend it even before you have it, which is kind of like a time travel trick, but it's absolutely necessary to support transaction batching, because each next action in the batch should be able to depend on the previous one. So, enter Ambire simulations. So, we've achieved pretty much all the goals here. They work without a third-party provider. We only use an RPC. They work on any EVM network that has a decent RPC. They're fast, reliable, and secure, which is not the case with all third-party providers. And they support multiple simulation states. So, what are those multiple simulation states? Let me give you an example, a visual example, so that you can understand it better. So, let's say that Little John already sent actually 100 USDC to his aunt, but this is not confirmed by the network yet. But now wants to buy Ether for 300 USDC. So in this case, we have three simulation states. We have one state which is the current chain, what's confirmed on the network, and then here on the second state, Little John has 100 USDC less. And then finally on the third state, which is the sort of like the time travel state, the state that we're going to be in after Little John signs the next transaction, is that Little John is going to have 600 USDC and 1.08 ETH, because they swapped USDC for ETH. But the point here is it goes like a timeline. So how does this all work? And basically, it's a lot of magic. The first piece of magic is the pending block. And pending block is sort of like a virtual block that every RPC supports, which includes all the transactions that are currently pending, all the transactions that are in the mempool. And lots of things actually use the pending block without us realizing it. So one example is, a very simple example is, I take MetaMask and I very quickly sign and send the transaction on one laptop, but then I go on another device and I do the same really quickly. And this is going to work. How is it going to work if the second computer doesn't know about what we did on the first one? Actually, it does know, and it does know thanks to the pending block, because the pending block includes all the transactions that are pending network confirmation. So as soon as I use the first computer to send the transaction, the second computer can know, only using the RPC, that this transaction exists and that the next transaction needs to depend on its state and has to use the next nonce or even has to use the updated balance. Another easy example is Uniswap. So when you see the quote on Uniswap, that's calculated against the pending block, not against the latest, as far as I know. So you're getting the most accurate price. So, as an example, if you're trading a shitcoin and someone is dumping a lot of it, but this dump isn't confirmed by the network yet, you're still going to see the price after the dump. So, thanks to the pending block, we have the immediate response now possible, and then an additional bonus that we have is that we also see all of the money that we are about to receive from pending transactions. But why am I talking about pending transactions, considering they haven't been an issue for years? What I mean by that is, ever since Ethereum updated its fee pricing, we don't get stuck transactions anymore, and this feature would be really valuable with stuck transactions, because if someone is claiming that they're sending me money but the transaction is stuck, I ought to know. But that's no longer an issue. What's the bigger issue is how do we simulate stuff for transactions that aren't even signed yet? And the pending block doesn't give us an answer. So yeah, if the pending block exists, then why does everyone still use a third-party provider for simulations? And the reason is that it doesn't allow you to simulate stuff that's not signed yet. But we have a way of doing this, and this is another example. In this case, we have multiple operations batched together. We are swapping USDT for Ether, we are unwrapping Ether, we are approving Uniswap as well, so there's no need for another transaction for the approval. But we do see the end result of the simulation here. And also another example. In this case, I'm simply sending 5 Ether to some address, and I can see in the simulation that I'm sending this. So how about the third goal, the batching? So we can also do this, and you can see what is about to happen from the transaction that you're about to sign, and obviously make actions depending on that. So how do we do this? How do we do this without a third-party provider? So it's not really public at the moment, but I can tell you this much. It's using only publicly available RPC calls that most of the networks already support, so like ETHCO and others, but it doesn't do any like big magic, so to speak. So it doesn't use anything that we are relying on a certain RPC provider, or we are relying on certain debug traces or whatever. It uses methods that every RPC has. And it also has a lot to do with the fact that we use account abstraction and a lot to do with smart accounts, although it does work for EOAs as well. I didn't mention in the presentation, but Ambire supports EOAs as well, and we do simulations for EOAs as well, but EOAs actually depend on having state override on this network. By the way, who here knows what state override is? Wow, okay, so we're still early. So basically, to translate this in human language, we support it on every single network except Gnosis chain, sorry Gnosis, but please enable state override. So yeah, hopefully this works. And this is a video demo of how our simulations work. And this is the most mind-blowing bit that I was telling you about, that you can use the output from a swap that hasn't even executed yet. So here we see the user queuing a swap, trying to do a swap and adding it to their queue that's going to become a transaction later. And in this case, you see that the user is about to receive 15 DAI, but the user is not signing yet. The user is going on the dashboard, and they see that they're about to receive 15 DAI if they sign this transaction. And now they can actually use the same 15 DAI that they don't have yet, and then send it to someone. And then finally sign the transaction, although this user is particularly greedy and is going to use the rest of the DAI to put on Aave. I did not know about this, I did not watch the video. And yeah, the greedy user is now signing the transaction batch, and in this case, it's an email-powered account on Ambire, so you do have to sign with your email. But yeah, I think that could be everything in the video, or there could be more of it. I'm guessing we're waiting for the user to enter the confirmation code, and
He's doing his 2FA.
Yeah, he's doing his 2FA. He's taking his sweet time. But yeah, basically that's the whole point. That you can use the output from the previous stuff you have in the batch to add more stuff to the batch. And yeah, I think that's a wrap. And we do have time for questions. Yeah. Questions? Anyone? Going once, going twice, yes? No, it doesn't. Yeah, that's a good question. It doesn't have anything to do with that, but as I mentioned, it has to do with smart contracts. So the way we do this, there is something called a spoof signature, which allows you to sign any transaction only as long as it's running in a simulation. So the contract of the user account knows whether it's executing in a simulation off-chain or whether it's executing on-chain. So if it's executing off-chain, it allows anyone to generate a valid signature, and that's how we generate valid signatures to accounts that we don't have access to. But those signatures are not valid on-chain. They're only valid in the simulation, because to do this simulation, you kind of have a chicken and egg problem. You need the transaction to be signed in order to simulate it, but obviously you do need to simulate it in order to create the transaction, because you want to know if you're secure, you want to know if it does what you're expecting it to do. So that's how we solve the chicken and egg problem there.
So what about the rollback? So for example, the simulation goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and at some point it's not verified. What happens, if the assumption of the simulation fails?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I'm not sure either, because this is continued to be true, but
do you want me to just talk about failure modes? Because that would be kind of interesting.
Sure.
So yeah, so that's something that everyone in the space is trying to resolve. Like for example, also Tenderly, Wolfish, and a bunch of other companies. We are all trying to solve this issue of what if a scam knows that it's running in a simulation and doesn't do the scamming thing, but then it would know whether it's on-chain and then do the scamming thing on-chain. So it's a problem for the whole industry. We do have ways to circumvent it, and for obvious reasons it's not good to tell everyone those ways at this moment in time. But yeah, it is an industry-wide issue, and we're all trying to beat it. Okay, I guess that's everything, and you can follow me on Twitter and Warpcast, or should I call it X? I'm guessing it's not a super successful rebrand, but yeah. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.